Every 7 minutes in America, a child is bullied. And while those numbers from the Kentucky Center for School Safety are alarming, the story doesn't stop there, because a majority of the time when these episodes occur, there's no one around to intervene. Anti-bullying. Now, there are 46 states in the country that have anti-bullying laws, so that should tell you something. On the show today, we're going to take a closer look at bullying, how to identify it and how to combat it, especially in our schools and workplaces. And later in the half hour, we're going to meet the coach who will be shepherding a handful of area youngsters as they perform in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Have jump rope, we'll travel. Kentucky Outlook is next. Hello, we're glad you joined us. The program is Kentucky Outlook. I'm your host, Barbara Deeb, and we're talking about the Jumpin Jaguars. Later in the show, we'll tell you more about them and how 5 youngsters are going to participate in the annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York. But first, the issue of bullying. Do you know that 47% of high school students who were surveyed said that they were bullied, teased, or taunted in a way that seriously upset them in the past year? Our guest on today's program will shed some light on the issue of bullying as we welcome to the program Todd Hazel. Todd is the Student Assistance Coordinator for the Warren County School System. Thank you for joining us,
Glad
Todd.
to be here.
In addition, we're joined by Dr. Bill Fole, William Fole. He's a professor of psychology at Western Kentucky University. In addition, he's the past president of both the National Association of School Psychologists and the International School Psychologists Association. So you bring that broader perspective. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Before we get started, let's get a working definition of bullying, because you know it's been given that name over the past several years. Years before, we may have called it something else. So and so is being mean to me. So and so is taunting me, teasing me. But now we put it all under this umbrella called bullying. What do we mean?
Well, in the schools, the way that we look at it is repeated negative actions by one or more students, and oftentimes it includes threats and intimidation. So for us, that's bullying. Whereas with harassment, it's just annoying or tormenting students to the point where there's no threatening or intimidation.
Well, now, I mentioned in the introduction that 46 states now have a law on the books related to anti-bullying. Is Kentucky one of them?
Yes, it is. We have one that goes with the discipline strategies. So while it was never called a anti-bullying law, it really asked the schools to do a lot more as far as discipline, a lot more structure in how they intervene, and a lot more reporting. So while we talk about the 47%, which is a fairly good estimate, we're really not sure how much goes on because we've never had to report it before. So Kentucky has really stepped up to the plate on this, more than some of the other states actually.
So that's a working definition, but we've heard so much about cyberbullying as well. Yeah. So under that big umbrella definition, do we have cyberbullying?
Cyberbullying is using media to, in fact, inflict pain and psychological pain on other people, or to shun them, or to start rumors about them, using some social media, Facebook, Twitter, any other way that they can do it without actually confronting the person involved. Yeah, it's not face-to-face.
So this is a large part of
it is. We still have the physical bullying, the verbal bullying, all those things that take place in the schools. But over the last few years with social media, Facebook, Twitter, kids have really gotten better about hiding that in the schools, where now it's taking place in the homes.
And some of these laws, if I'm not mistaken, are all-encompassing. They take the behavior, if you will, off the campus and into the home, if indeed it affects the day-to-day. Help us understand that.
If it does do that, the problem is being able to trace it, and that's where schools and other individuals in law enforcement have had a difficult time, is actually tracing the source, because sometimes students can actually post it anonymously, and they can start Facebook pages and things, and not supposed to, but they do, that you can't be traced as easily. And kids have gotten very good with Instagram and things like that of being able to do it, and then it vanishes. So as the technology has improved, so have the incidents and the intensity of the bullying, because there's no fear of being caught, pretty much.
And the sophistication.
Right. With House Bill 91 passing, it really did assist us in the school systems of putting things into place to be more proactive in helping students. And we are now able to work with students if they have an issue outside of school. It is an outside of school issue, but you know that students always bring that into school, and at any time that it disrupts the learning environment, we have to address that, and we will address that, and we want to make sure that kids are safe and come to school and feel safe.
Let's break it down, okay? So we've defined bullying, we know what that is. Why do kids bully? Are there specific characteristics of, we can point out in this little box that these behaviors are indeed indicative of someone who's going to be a bully? Can you identify ahead of time that this child may have traits of bullying? How does that work?
If you want to look at, is there a profile for it? Probably not. We used to think that kids with low self-esteem or kids who got bullied would be the bully in return. The research has not supported that at all. In fact, these kids have really high self-esteem. They usually have a position of status, either within a peer group or socially within the school. They might be a captain of a football team. They might be a president of a student government. So it really is quite different than we thought. So it's not a low self-esteem issue. It's somebody who has power over somebody, and they can use their friends or their networks in order to enforce their power on somebody else, what we might call a target or a victim. So it's hard to say who might do it, though the pattern, once started, is pretty consistent. So people usually do it more than once, and they do it over time, and they will see that progress through their school age years, and possibly, as we said in the opening, possibly into the workplace without any problems there at all.
I was just going to say, with House Bill 91 being passed, it has enabled us to go outside of the school in the school day, and this goes in, it's in effect at sporting events. And if a
Where
kid,
I bet you would see a lot of bullying.
Yes, and if you have the baseball team and they're traveling out of state and bullying is still taking place on the school bus or at the event, it's still an issue that the coach can address, that can be addressed through school.
So I want to understand something better. Okay, so the assumption is, well, that child, an assumption, and you know what they say about those things, but likely has low self-esteem. You're saying that the research indicates that it's usually the children with higher self-esteem.
Correct.
So why do they do it? If we look at the why, because a low self-esteem child, you would think, well, it's going to give them and make them feel higher in their self-esteem, but someone who has high self-esteem, why?
There's a couple of things. One, it's learned behavior. So we have identified that. So they may have learned it someplace else, at home, in schools, that they find out that this behavior is effective. So you could say, in a simple sense, it works.
Effective in...
Effective works. It intimidates others. It gives you a power status over them. You find that they are, the target or the victim is actually impacted by it in a negative way, and that helps them continue their social status. So it may in fact end up, and the third reason is social status. They actually increase in social status because they're bigger, stronger, more verbal, more articulate in being able to pick on or bully another individual. So there's really three reasons that we can find at this time.
And it's less likely to be reported too. If it's someone who has a higher popularity, social status, it's going to be less reported.
So the one who's maybe a little less popular, who might be the victim, is reluctant to report it because that's only going to add to the humiliation and the
Quite
bullying.
possibly.
In fact, they have found that if kids report it, even that's what we ask them to do, it may in fact increase it, and that's their biggest fears. So as we get to what signs you might look for, one of the things kids do is avoid school because they don't have the power or the status to influence it being stopped.
Ooh, and there's a statistic from the Kentucky Center for School Safety. Listen to this. Approximately 60% of boys who are bullies, who are identified as bullies in grades 6 through 9, have at least one conviction by the age of 24. So, I mean, that's a sign of future behavior?
Oh yeah, as I said earlier, it carries over very much. And the other thing we haven't talked about is how girls bully. because it's very different than how boys bully.
So we have a gender bias in bullying.
Oh, we clearly do. And you know when that starts? It's really interesting. 3 years old.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, we see it.
You know, we're looking at school age,
right?
But you're telling me that even preschool age, we see bullying incidents.
Yeah, I've done some thesis here at Western with our school psychology students in what we call relational aggression, which is girls on girls, and mean girls, as that whole concept has come about, and it's a whole different level. But what really surprised me and our graduate students was the fact how early it started and how incredibly predictive it was over age development. Right. So it changes from physical at 3 to verbal at 6 and 7 to social shunning at 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, rumors, and also use of social media. So there's a completely different way of operating for a female who bullies than there is for a male that bullies.
But it makes sense with the ages, doesn't it? Because at age 3 you wouldn't necessarily be as articulate, so it might come out in a more aggressive form.
It does.
In the middle schools, when that peer pressure is so intense.
Well, actually it starts at 4th grade, the verbal, with the girls. So you can see that major change from a physical pushing, shoving, confrontation type to I'm not going to be your friend. Or I start a rumor, Sally's really a jerk, she's dumb. I don't want to be your friend today. And that has incredible power within the social structure of the schools.
It does specifically with females. The social isolation for them is a lot more difficult than it is with the males. Right. Males seem to deal with it and get through it and past it, but with the females, they really rely on their social relationships that I've seen in schools. So it is different.
So there are schools in the country that have cameras in the schools, and is that one way to identify if indeed a bullying incident is taking place?
For us in the school system, we do have them in our schools. We also have them on school buses. So if a kid reports an incident happening, we are able to pull a tape and confirm that situation. And if it did happen, there's the proof that it makes it a lot easier to not only discipline the child, but get them the help they need. It's not all about discipline. We want to educate these kids on long-term effects of bullying. So it's an education process as well.
But even with the video documentation of a bullying incident, if it's something like on social media where you don't, I guess you can document that, but also where just the intimidation where you can't see it, there are different ways. And let's talk a little bit about the ways.
And there's places cameras can't be in schools.
Places, oh yeah, and that's probably where a lot of this
bathrooms
happens.
That's some of the biggest places that bullying takes
really
place is in the bathrooms.
The kids know where they are being bullied or intimidated. And what they tend to do is avoid those places, even with the camera. The other thing about the cameras, they're video only. They don't have auditory. You don't hear the audio. So you don't hear the you're a stupid idiot as you walk down the hall. I recall an incident on Glee. I know,
a
the
television
TV show,
program.
the football players doing each other in the hallway. Well, a lot of that wasn't seen. It was a lot of, verbal types of intimidation of walking by. And that's not unusual to see with kids. So even with the video, it's hard to say without the physical contact.
Right. But what's worse, and can you even say what's worse, being verbally abused and or physically abused?
It depends on what part of the intimidation the target or the victim has. Both are very powerful. And people kind of say to boys, oh, just put up with it, suck it up, go on. We were bullied.
Part of being a
part of manhood and going on to that. And I'd like to let the viewers know, this is a whole different level than most parents went through. Because I hear that argument every day from parents. Oh, I had to go through that. Right. It was part of my life.
Made me tougher.
It made me tougher, or I'm a better person for it. It's really hard to believe that's true. Because most parents want their kids to retaliate, which is absolutely probably not going to be effective at all. And then with females, what do you do to retaliate against? I don't want to be your friend. So it's not the same as most of the parents, most of the viewers saw when they grew up. It is much more intense. It's much more personal, probably less physical than it used to be, much more socially isolating and psychologically intimidating than we've ever seen. And they go at it earlier.
You concur with that?
I agree with that, yes.
Yeah. The physical nature, you say less physical, and a lot of that has to do with stricter standards and at the state level and at the federal level,
Well,
right?
yeah, and the videos have helped cut down some of that too. I mean, when you walk by and clip a kid in the side of the head on the way down in the bus, that's pretty obvious. But if you start trashing him or talking about his mother or starting to say you're an idiot or I'm not going to like you anymore, that's a lot harder to document. And people will say, oh, come on, those are only words. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but
names will never hurt me. Yes.
People still rely on a lot of that old kind of thinking, and as we get to interventions, they don't support their kids. They just say, tough it out, stick up for it. And a kid is so isolated who's the target or the victim. They're so isolated. They don't have friends to support them where the bullies do.
Let's talk about the victim. Like you say, definitely isolated, and females in the gender split, females seem to have a tougher time with that isolation from their peers. And so who are usually the victims? Are they always the weaker one? Are they always the one with the lower self-esteem?
It's a real mix, but yes, those would be two characteristics. But the child who does not fit in socially, the child who probably has some maybe special needs, a child who may be dealing with sexual identity issues, are the highest level of those who become victims by far. And then the other people who appear weak or they've done something stupid, what kids do. And all of a sudden a bunch of kids will pick up on that and they'll just drill it into the ground. And all of a sudden a kid who was on the edges now becomes the target of this incredible bullying, not only from maybe one person, but from multiple people. It's possible. There's a whole concept called bystanders, which are witnesses or people who actually support the bully. They'll stand around.
And kind of flame the fire, don't they?
Well, they're there to support, and it's perceived as support for the bully, not for the victim.
You came from Simpson County where you said there were 700 students, and suddenly you're in the district where there are 14,000 students. Yes. Every day, would it be safe to say there's some type of bullying that goes on in those schools?
Yes. We have things in place in our schools. We have obviously a district policy that addresses it, but we've gone a step further and now we have the schools, and this has been going on for a few years now. They have their own policy. So
each school has its own policy?
Yes. So it may be different from school to school, but sometimes there's a step process. If a kid comes to the office for bullying or harassment, there's the steps that are taken, and that way it's good for parents to have that as well. So that if they want to address it and want to address it with the school, they can kind of look down the steps or look at the process of it and when they contact the school, just to make sure those things have taken place. We also have an administrator's quick reference guide that every administrator in our district has, and we have a tab on bullying or harassment. And if they don't know what to do, they can just flip open and it's a quick reference for them to be able to get help. And most of the time that's to contact me for support from the district level.
So let's take it through, okay? We've got an incident. There appears to be an incident of bullying in a school system. In this case, we'll say Warren County school system. So the child goes home, tells their parents, I'm being bullied at school. You get a call from a parent, okay? The parent does not say, like Bill reported, maybe tough it up. The parent really wants something to be done about this. Yes. What happens?
They will talk to the administrator. The administrator will take the information and consult with the guidance counselor, pull the student in, get the story. Oftentimes they'll have them write the story up so that they don't have to...
The student who's the victim?
The student who's the victim. Okay. That way they don't have to repeat their story over and over and over.
Okay.
So they document that. And then from there they start questioning. I think the biggest assistance that we can get in our schools, and that's what we're doing, is educating kids on the bystander. And report,
like he talked about, those who just stand by and sort of egg it on, if you will.
And reporting that, and we do have kids. We have a lot of kids who step up, and they are tired of seeing it take place, and they will write a statement. They won't come forward to the office, but if you go into a classroom and you just say, has anyone seen this going on? If you'll write it up and keep it anonymous and just send it to the front of the class, there's all types of ways of dealing with that. A lot of times we get confirmation that it is that student so that we can address it. And again, there's disciplinary actions that take place, but we don't want just discipline. We want to educate that student on the actions that they're doing so that they can make better choices.
And hopefully eradicate that issue altogether.
Yes.
It's become more evident to talk about it, as we're doing on the show, which I think is a great idea. because again, there's an old school idea that I talked about earlier of how people look at bullying, and it really is different, and there are more help involved. But I want to back up to the statement you made, if they talk and come home and tell their parent. My experience as a psychologist is they don't. They're afraid to, because they're afraid what their parent may say, but they're also afraid that it may get out if the parent goes to school that the kid will now bully them more. Well, couldn't you work it out yourself? You have your dad and mom come.
Right.
So there's actually an initial hesitation to even talk about it. And the parent may say, what's wrong? And my experience as a psychologist, again, is nothing.
Nothing.
I'm fine.
So what should a parent look for? Okay, you're a parent, you're watching this show, so Johnny or Sally's not going to come to me and tell me this, but would I notice changes in their behavior maybe? That might be signals or signs that there's something going on?
Definitely withdrawal.
Withdrawal.
From
Avoidance of school?
Avoidance.
Avoidance, I don't
You know,
feel good today, I
My
don't want to
tummy
go to
hurts,
school.
my head hurts,
Okay.
you know, I just don't feel good. Or go to school, and before that period where that may happen, or that time period, call home and be asked to bring home, I don't feel good.
Okay.
So there might be a small wrinkle in that too. The parent, oh, my kid goes to school. Yeah, but every day at 11 o'clock he calls because it's just before
Right.
lunch.
Or he's in the nurse's office.
Yes,
That's right.
And that's a good point. We've been able to narrow bullying situations down to a classroom, because we look at if a kid is calling every day and saying at 1 o'clock I want to go home, the rest of the day is fine, then we start looking at that class and that roster and that schedule. What's going on in that classroom? Is there something you're avoiding? And we have had situations come out of that. So I think for us as a school to continue digging in and trying to help that student out, and for them to eventually trust us and feel safe, it's ultimately going to help the student.
Because the bottom line, and we're quickly running out of time, but the bottom line is school should be a safe place for children, students, teachers.
It is, but I want to add another factor to what Tom's saying, is it may not be another student who's bullying them. It could be an adult student. And you have to, keep that in mind as you question the child, because if it's an adult, especially authority figure adult in the school, it could be a teacher or administrator or somebody, then they're much less hesitant to talk about that. Adults bully too.
Do you ever think there'll be a day when kids can go to school and there'll be no bullying that takes place, realistically, Todd?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No?
What we need to do is put support systems in place with education, letting people know what they are and where to go and what to do, and that the system will support the victim rather than just dismiss it as another act of growing up.
Good information, and we're going to put up some websites if you want to get more information. We've been talking with Dr. William Fola, professor of psychology at WKU, and Todd Hazel, who's the student assistance coordinator for the Warren County Schools, about bullying. Now, when we come back, it's not bullying, it's really an amazing feat for 5 students from the Warren County School System who are headed to the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade with their jump ropes. Stay tuned, Kentucky Outlook continues. Kentucky Outlook continues. I'm Barbara Deeb, and we're really excited because we need to be proud of these youngsters. 5 of them from Warren County will be headed to participate in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade jumping rope. They're the Jumpin Jaguars, and their coach, Vicki O'Dill, joins us right now. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Barb.
This is exciting stuff. Now, they're not affiliated with any one particular school. It's just 5 youngsters from Warren County, right?
Yes, that's correct. I have 3 jumpers from Greenwood High School and one jumper from Drakes Creek Middle School, one from South Warren, and one from Drakes Creek.
How does one get selected to do this?
Well, there's a coach named Pam Evans that's from Cleveland, Ohio, and she sent out requests to all the coaches across the United States to submit their jumpers from their teams, and there were 750 applicants, and you had to be at a certain skill level, a certain age. You had to be 12 years and older, and had competed nationally to be selected, and they chose 200, and these 5 were chosen to represent the state of Kentucky.
That's exciting, representing the state of Kentucky. Let's show that B-roll, the footage, because we attended one of your practices, and these kids work hard. Now, they have to, when they're in the parade, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, they will jump for 3 hours straight?
Yes, that's That's right. It's 2.5 miles, but they have to train to jump for 3 hours because they said that's about how long the parade will last.
And the routine that we're seeing on the video is actually the routine that they will be doing, which
Correct.
is called, does it have a special name?
Well, the team name is Jump for all the jumpers, which stands for Jumpers United for Macy's Parade. And so we call this the jump routine.
Okay, so it's the jump routine, 3 hours. And now my understanding is if they poop out, they get tired or something happens, they are yanked from the parade?
That's right. If they get sick or tired and stop, or if they have lots of misses, they have a little cart, we call it like a little golf cart, that will come by and pick them up and take them to the end of the route. And they will sit in this building and wait for the rest of them to get there. So.
Wow, that is unbelievable. So they really have reason to practice and be up to par.
Right.
Speaking of being up to par, and look at Vicki, she's in amazing shape, but you've been training with them, and you're saying they are running now because they have to have their cardio at a
Right.
certain place, 10 miles?
Well, most of them have been trying to run up to 10 miles. So yes, on their days off from jumping, they've been running.
So how often do they practice?
We're practicing 2 days a week, and we've been performing a few times. So the 3 days a week of jumping. We've jumped 2.5 hours straight last week, and this week it's going to be 3 hours.
So what does this mean? You know, a competitive jump rope team, and it's great exercise, incidentally, but it's, what does this mean for these kids? Are they as fired up as we are about it?
I think they're excited about it. Of course, a few of them have never been to New York,
Okay.
and so they're not really sure what they're in for. We did do the Veterans Parade last
Locally.
weekend, and that one lasted about 30 minutes. So
A little
yeah,
different.
It's going to be a little bit different.
And
than
we're
that,
hoping for
so.
good weather in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yes, because they'll jump regardless if it's raining or snowing, or hopefully it's sunny and 65.
There you
but-
go, there you go. What an exciting opportunity. So you'll leave for the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade when?
We leave on Sunday, November 24th, that morning.
Okay, and then get there.
We get there right after lunch, and we're going to take Sunday evening and Monday and tour the 9/11 Memorial and the Statue of Liberty and Empire State Building and stuff like that. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, all day, both days, they have practices outdoors in Brooklyn and various parts of New York.
Ooh, and then
So-
Thursday's the parade. What time do you have to be there?
They have to be ready around 6.
6
their
a.m.
time.
Eastern time.
Yeah.
Vicki O'Dell, good luck to you.
Thank you.
And we're very excited for your Jumpin' Jaguars who will be participating in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Kentucky Outlook. Until next time, I'm Barbara Deeb. We're glad you joined us.